What up, peeps? So, Under the Silver Lake. To my current subs, I appreciate all of your patience because I know that it's been around less than a year since the last part. Reason being is because I simply just wanted to grow my channel. I had and still have way too many project ideas, but I needed to teach myself to commit to things I say I was going to do. So part 2 is definitely something that I made a priority before I do anything else. I also wanted to do more analysis type videos in the future, so hopefully I'll get to that. Now, I had to watch this movie again and I started to see it differently after that watch. Now, for those who don't know or care, I will be 30 this month, and because I'll be 30 by the time this video is uploaded, or maybe beforehand, I started to connect with Sam a little more. As I was making videos, my mind has been on revisiting this movie the entire time. I'm serious. But I was afraid of what I was going to say, or if my interpretations were going to be right or wrong, or I started wondering if they were going to be worse than others, because I know that there have been videos that have also done analysis, and it's been a little intimidating. But thinking less of those actually started to help me, and I chose to wait until I had a mental renewal and more analysis experience due to working full-time, and it allows my brain to refresh my experience because this movie is layered. Now, I'm going to be adding a little more of Sam into this video despite already talking in detail about him as a character in the last part, but his journey in the film equates to the criticism of the Hollywood industry. The details of the Hollywood industry are pretty obvious since the film is about how the industry for years has been exploiting women, i.e. let's say Harvey Weinstein, Woody Allen, Kevin Spacey, Casey Affleck, Roman Polanski, R. Kelly. Do I have to go on? I'll just put the IMDb link in the description. But it's telling that Sam, in my opinion, represents the possible few that might have had a history in the entertainment industry, but after this strange and surreal journey, he's, I dare say, rescued from this future. After the whole Hobo King fiasco, at this point in time, he's about disconnected from the mystery. His endgame, learning about Sarah, led him to a safer life, if you ask me. This is more evident pertaining to the millionaire that disappeared and was believed to be killed in a car crash. Sam pretty much goes on the same journey as the millionaire, but is told to go home. Sam isn't ready for this type of experience. Once he and his ex broke up, that sealed the deal that his life needed to be different. But what's hauntingly disturbing about this film is that the Hobo King is also in on this crazy scheme to keep this weird, creepy concubine cult tradition thing a secret. Why? Well, I always interpreted this as maybe the Hobo King also being a victim of the Hollywood system, and maybe like some kind of servant. At least that's what I think. Maybe he's in charge of keeping the has-beens or dreamers or losers from achieving these degrees of quote-unquote achievements, or possibly he's trying to save Sam himself by giving him clues but letting him be independent on finding out these situations himself. Just my interpretation, nothing fancy. This film also has a theme of glorification of something you don't understand or don't see beyond. Like, why does Sam like to glorify Kurt Cobain? In a sense, Sam is the opposite of Cobain. Cobain was another victim of the entertainment industry, to where the fame and fortune wasn't worth it to him. It destroyed him internally. Cobain had a pretty dark history, but what we glorify, we don't truly understand. The Playboy magazine that was in his room that he said that he masturbated to when he was younger, it's brilliantly reincorporated, showing the underlying darkness of what he glorified from kid to adult. This is also prevalent with the song Turning Teeth by the fictional band Jesus and the Brides of Dracula. The funny thing is, the lyrics are pretty obvious. I mean, I love the song and I play it regularly, but the lyrics communicating with no subtlety that there's an underlying darkness behind what the world glorifies. The lead singer is also a tool of the falsity they present in the reality. He doesn't even write his own lyrics. And my favorite scene, and I think most people's favorite scene, is when Sam learns that everything that he praises and glorifies was written by some old guy playing the piano. It's obviously satirical, but it raises questions about the person behind the things he loves. The term "there's nothing new under the sun" has never had a greater meaning, even in the film that satirizes that very term in an exaggerated manner. And I love that he says all this while looking right at the viewer. This scene in general wants us to contemplate the glorification we put on others who also glorify others that glorified others. I don't know if it was supposed to be a pessimistic statement on how we perceive art and what it means to be an artist, but I feel that this was just an angle that Mitchell wanted to implement to reflect Sam as a character. As I said before, Sam was or possibly had the potential to be a part of something. Maybe his ex was smarter than him, and the man that she's with now gives her answers that Sam just didn't. Or maybe even her new boyfriend becomes a corrupted Hollywood sleaze that no one will see. It's just an oversight, but it's a possibility. Now, there is an interesting detail that involves Sam that might also be a bit of an overanalysis, but it involves Sam's mom calling him earlier in the film and asking about the movie Seventh Heaven and recommends it to him because she adores the movie and the lead actress Janet Gaynor. Now, I say parallel in a very vague manner because Janet Gaynor's backstory is something you can read on Wikipedia, but Janet retired acting at 33 years old, and Sam, from the details we know about him, he's also 33. Now, the plot to Seventh Heaven does parallel with the plot of this movie in certain ways. It's about how the character Chico wants to save a prostitute played by Janet Gaynor, who plays Diane. Now, it's kind of funny that Sam's mom recommends this movie because Sam also wants to save a girl that he loves from a sex-exploited occupation or albeit cult, but I also love the fact that Sam doesn't even succeed in saving Sarah, but also he doesn't even finish the movie. I mean, he was 44 minutes in the movie, and he had a decent hour that he went through, so he could have finished the last 44 minutes, but the parts he did see clearly shows that he wished his journey to save the girl that he was in love with turned out the same as it did for Chico and Diane. And Diane indirectly tells Sam to look up, not down. But how can he hit the film and real life are completely different things? Ironically, in a film that is so surreal and odd that it still doesn't compare to a fictional film that has more realism than this movie. Kind of funny, right? But Janet Gaynor chose to move from the entertainment life and live a more grounded life, completely disbanding from the entertainment industry. And Sam is pretty much living the plot of a Hollywood thriller that gives him the unfortunate Vertigo ending in a sense. Now, believe it or not, I just recently watched the movie It Follows, David Roger Mitchell's film before this movie, and I noticed that he uses very similar techniques and also explores slightly similar themes. His camera work in the film utilizes tracking shots and shots that almost have some sort of observing omniscience to it, and it always feels like taking this journey to self-discovery or self-acceptance with the characters when they go through these nearly surreal journeys that say quite a bit about themselves, from learning and growing through their otherworldly experience that I think many others can relate to, especially when it comes to age. I also love how this film pokes fun at the concept of analysis. My first viewing of this film was me being Sam without actually realizing it. Sam is writing all these codes and details and uncovering these mysteries, and it for me seems to reference the internet community that is obsessed with deciphering meaning in film. I don't think it's intentionally patronizing those people, but it does give those type of viewers an angle that makes them think that they're in control of their own willingness to decipher details and ultimately, like Sam, make it meaningless in some ways. In a way though, it's still justified because it does lead him to darker secrets, but the result is that his goal is not achieved in the end. The beauty of the film is that it's a reflection of ourselves, and the film reflects on how viewers can subconsciously search for answers in the film the same way Sam's reflections of answers to Sarah reflect his own need for his own personal answers for himself, the same way many of us look for concrete meaning in our own lives that we feel is meaningless at times. I mean, it's true. And the film also explores in a mythical sense the whole idea of a cult. Sarah apparently is part of a cult that sacrifices their women like freaking concubines, and this part of the film never really absorbed me. Not in a sense where I wasn't invested, but I didn't really understand it. Like, why in God's name does Robert Mitchell implement a cultist theme into this film? But it came to my own interpretation that this whole segment is actually really creepy and unsettling. One, this guy looks like a less appealing version of Jesus, and he claims 3 women to be his brides. Now, let's go back to the song Turning Teeth. Now, is this song some sort of strategic bait to get women into these tombs? I mean, this band is so glorified that they're slowly building recognition over time. So are they poster children for getting women to become sacrificial concubines without them actually realizing it? The lyrics are so honestly well written that I suggest you actually go to genius.com and read some of the meaning of the lyrics. But how it works in detail is clearly part of the ambiguity of the film, because the song actually reflects several things. The revealing of the creepy tomb cult, You and I Were Dancing to a Song You Had Never Heard, reflects the balloon girl not knowing the rock song that she and Sam danced to.
I want to dance to this. Come on.
I don't know this song.
And then there's Black Hair, Blonde Remorse, which actually sort of means Sam's sadness and depression about his relationship with his black-haired ex-girlfriend. Now, Blonde Remorse being Sam because he apparently has dirty blonde hair, maybe? I mean, because Sam is under various degrees of lighting, it's hard to pay attention to what his hair color is. I did some Google searching though and searched specifically dirty blonde, and I guess he has blonde strands in his hair, and so that can make sense. Now, Blonde Remorse could also imply that Sam is projecting his sadness onto Sarah, who is clearly blonde because he's subconsciously searching for something entirely different from his ex while still holding on to that degree of connection, but that's my own interpretation, as I keep saying. But going back to the tomb scene, after 6 months there'll be what Creepy Jesus calls ascended, which means they'll probably be sacrificed, but we never really know exactly where or how they'll be sacrificed. But what I both loved and disturbed me is the fact that this Jesus figure was probably told this the same way the billionaire was told, and there's a system beneath the Hollywood hills that is creating this cycle of cultish craziness that as a song says we can't see, and we're not supposed to. The whole point of the film is that we know as much as Sam does, and that gives us an equal degree of confusion in the experience. This is extended towards the owl's kiss, another frustrating yet intentionally ambiguous plot point. Now, when I first saw this movie, I thought the owl's kiss was some sort of vigilante that was trying to fight against the cultist underbelly that exploited women. But I feel I've come to the conclusion that she's working for the cult, which in a sense shows how much this cult has power over the LA system, if that makes sense, and it makes the world of Silver Lake darker and more compartmentalized with unseen agency than it actually is. She kills the comic man and God knows where the body is. I don't want to know. But I wonder why she didn't kill him sooner. She waited until he contacted Sam to do it. I'm not saying that this is a plot hole, but it's kind of convenient that Sam's not able to see him again until after he's collected more than enough info to have some leeway. And it's clear that the cult have surveillance in places even the audience is informed about. But what really confuses me is that she tries to sneak kill Sam, but when Sam turns around, she dips like a chip. I wonder why that's the case. I mean, the only reason that happens is because she had a knife and he had a gun, and there's nothing there to analyze. I wonder if the idea is that it shows that the cult might discover the owl's kiss is dead. They'll most likely have no way of keeping people from knowing about the cult, but because she cowered away, he goes anyway. And the Hobo King pretty much does the job the owl's kiss failed to do. I mean, the owl does represent freedom, wisdom, and leadership, so I wonder if the intent is that she's given a certain degree of freedom and privilege, unlike the other women that are part of the cult and are entitled to kill anyone financially inferior. The Jesus Creep does say that where they're going is very expensive, so maybe this whole cult is also financially in control of LA and intentionally targeting those who can't even afford apartment rent to end their means quickly. I mean, she doesn't kill the homeless men though, so maybe this is some sort of strategy to intimidate the financially inferior to give up trying to crawl out of their hole for meaning, but destroying their journeys to improve themselves and find meaning by being both seductive and murderous because she has an attractive presentation and it's easy to make a man fall for that because she has noted to be seductive. Maybe the cult is also establishing the class differences and are trying to maintain that separation between rich and poor in order to keep the gears of LA going. I mean, the film is set during the financial crisis during the Obama era, so maybe this cult was built around the same time the crisis hit and they're trying to maintain the higher up stats by keeping the rich rich and the poorer poorer. Maybe this cult is used to sacrifice the chosen few to turn them into some sort of tool for the masses to consume. What, you ask? I don't know, but whatever hides under the Silver Lake has to be strictly for financial purposes, out of desperation until the financial crisis ends, because it seems way too connected. Or maybe I'm just crazy or something. I mean, I don't know, maybe I am, I don't know. Let's just move on. So I also want to talk about this theory that Sam is actually in a purgatory. Now, this theory actually reminds me of the one that's used for Caden Cotard in Synecdoche, New York, and it's pretty much how the play expands unrealistically, and then you have the line where he's acknowledged to live between stasis and anti-stasis, yada yada yada. Just see the movie. But I can find some interesting evidence of that, but I also don't think this movie is entirely literal, like the squirrel falling right in front of him and dies on impact. Well, since squirrels represent future planning and preparation, I personally interpret this as a subtle introduction to Sam's character as someone that doesn't and didn't prepare for his future. I mean, his ex-girlfriend is famous and now he's a has-been who doesn't pay his bills or rent on time. He's the squirrel that doesn't stockpile for future situations like this. He's a 33-year-old slacker that constantly falls flat on his face and he still doesn't really care. Then there's a whole thing where he beats up kids that assaulted his car. Now, I watched a video that theorized that because he's in a purgatory that he was actually beating up a version of himself in the past, and that seems like an interesting interpretation, and if it is, I would say it ties well with his love for Nirvana, which comes up that this music was during his rebellious times when he confronted the old guy. Once again, this is a well communicated aspect of his character. He still hasn't grown up in my opinion. The way he attacks these kids is the way a bully would around their age that would attack them. Now, I'm not saying that it wasn't well deserved. I mean, they messed up his car with gunk, but considering that he has everything that was from his childhood, from magazines to the NES to his love for Nirvana, he's still sort of living in the past. This is also supported by his constant Vinicius posters that he has around his apartment. So I wouldn't really say a purgatory, but I would say we're just getting a glimpse inside his own universe. I'm not sure if the film ever addresses this in detail, if he was like a fan of film or anything, but maybe he's consumed so much fiction that he just doesn't see the world in a realistic way. Once again, my take. And then we have some of the subtle details and references of the movie that I appreciated, such as Sam's apartment complex called Rancho Silver Lake Apartments. This one's kind of funny, but when Sam sees 751 on the baseball scoreboard the girls point at, all I thought to myself was 7 plus 5 minus 1 equals 3, hence the 3 girls, which reinforces that there's no definite meaning behind why 751 is even there, but the film pokes fun at stimulating this possibility of a deeper meaning, so thanks movie for doing that to me. But it does establish that 3 women at a time can go to this tomb with a creepy rich guy. The girls holding the cherries, they're holding them like you know what I mean. It kind of symbolizes how the exploitation of women feeds the control the media has over male consumers. The Egyptian artwork in the underground path that Sam's in is incorporated when Creepy Jesus acknowledges that they're following the traditions of Pharaoh and their cult. And to add to that, there's pipelines that look like Mario pipelines. I like the scene of Sam playing chess, and his choices in the game might have paralleled the choices that he made in his life up to this point. This one indicates how detached from reality this film playfully is, but the old man plays Ode to Joy by Beethoven, which he says that he put on his list of songs that he wrote, which doesn't make any sense because how can he have written that song in 1818? So by then you can tell this movie isn't taking itself entirely too seriously. And then there's that large crowd watching the movie Myth of an American Sleepover, which is actually David Robert Mitchell's early film, and I don't know if this is some sort of self-stroke or this to communicate how exploitable or replaceable female actresses are, because Claire Soma actually plays the Maggie character in the movie, but in Silver Lake it's Inhumanuous who actually plays the Silver Star prostitute that plays that role. Now, am I the only one that sees Sarah's dolls in the shoebox to be some sort of foreshadow of her and the other two living in the tomb with personal possessions? Seems like it to me. And then there's a lot of the posters that have films that are sort of referencing ideas communicated in the film, such as Dracula, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, How to Marry a Billionaire, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Rear Window. And then you have the poster of the film Farewell to Arms, which actually, like the film Seventh Heaven, references the kind of love story that Sam aspired to have with Sarah. Now, going back to The Brides, where I originally pointed out 3 women are always going in the tomb, this is possibly a reference to the Bible involving the 3 Marys at the tomb of Jesus Christ in the New Testament. Now, in the Bible, Mark chapter 16 verse 1 specifies 3 Marys: Mary Magdalene, James's mother, and the Mary of Salome, aka Saint Mary of Salome. And in the film, it's a possible contortion of the biblical story of those 3 Marys when they were going to visit Christ, even though they're going in the tomb to have the foursome and watch old movies. Again, really creepy. It could also be a splicing of the Egyptian tradition and biblical stories, and Nicole was inspired by those, possibly and purposefully twisting it for their own convenience. What do y'all think? But I think in conclusion, it's safe to say that there's quite a lot to decipher from this movie than I personally thought. I'm not promising a part 3 of this video, but if I revisit this film again, there might be a chance I'll have a little more to say. Overall, I again apologize that this second part didn't come soon enough, and I also want to add that if there's anything else that you believe I missed, or maybe something I misinterpreted, just hit in the comment section with whatever your interpretation is. Either you agree or disagree, think I'm just overthinking parts of this movie, just let me know, because I love different perspectives of art, and yes, this movie is art. I feel the polarizing reviews that criticize aspects of this movie are aspects that strengthen the experience. Its ambiguity, its self-awareness, its bleak humor, its surrealness. The film is definitely aware that it's inspired by films like Mulholland Drive, since they use the same actor from that film. And then the Hitchcock Tombstone comes from its music, the cinematography, the tracking shots, the somewhat slow pacing that emphasizes the obsession of a person when in reality it's unconscious, selfish self-longing, and the numerous animal symbolism that's a little less than frequent but still pretty apparent. But this is a great film overall, and one that should be seen and is worth looking deeper in. And the fact that this film consists of endless perspectives from fans of the film really shows signs of a future classic. But if you liked the video, hit the like, subscribe, and I'll be working on some new projects in the future. So peace out and love y'all.